Welcome back to Easthaven County here in beautiful Massachusetts, where we are still running a sizable deficit and have lost a total of $4 million in our attempts at fixing the economy following the Economy 2.0 update. Now, this is despite implementing severe austerity measures, revamping service coverage, raising tax levels, and even demolishing a hospital and a fire station. And the main challenge here is that we have a low population that is spread out over a very large footprint. So while I do want to retain the rural characteristics of large part of Easthaven County, we are going to need to provide more housing, get more citizens and businesses into this place. And to do this, I asked you guys a big question in the most recent episode. Should we expand the existing cities, Chowder Bay and West Point, or should we build a new city altogether that's gonna be a proper mid-sized American city with a proper mid-sized American skyline? Now, the feedback from you guys was pretty roughly split between the two, so as a proper appeaser, I think we're gonna do both. So today we're kicking off with an expansion of Chowder Bay, including a rough high-detail neighborhood in a unique location, a 1960s suburb using a quick asset editor trick for a more diverse look, and a revamp of downtown with my own custom assets. Because before we can build a new city, I need some input on where to place it. I've gotten some great suggestions thus far, including the placement of it here, north of the rail yard of West Point, but there's also been quite a few calls to place it on this hilly peninsula just south of West Point so that it's more centrally located. I want you guys' feedback on this, so please leave a comment telling me what you feel, and if you've got a third location altogether, feel free to add that into the mix as well. Anyways, let's get building. Right after this totally non-invasive reminder to like this video if you enjoy my content, as that really helps out. Thank you. We are gonna kick off here in good old Chowder Bay, the main hub of the Easthaven County thus far, at least, population-wise, politically and economically. And I'm obviously gonna have to be a bit careful with the changes because we still need to balance our budgets. I think a good start might be to actually impose a roadside parking fee because these are inner city areas. I think that would be fairly realistic. So we're gonna give it a go at least and see how this affects our budgets. I'm actually just gonna pause because I imagine, let's see, service fees. So currently we're earning $3,840 a month on parking fees, which is a very, very small amount, especially if we divide it by 24 to get this figure here. So we're gonna see how that changes if we add a parking fee to downtown and Old Town. I'm gonna add some speed bumps as well to encourage lower traffic speeds. This should reduce the amount of accidents. And I'm just quickly gonna move over to West Point as well, because I think it's only realistic that the same policies are applied over here. Roadside parking fees and speed bumps, and the same deal with the marina, which is a recreational area. So we're gonna add the parking fees and speed bumps, and then I'm just gonna let the simulation run real quickly and we'll see how that actually changes our fee income. So it's been lowered. Okay, I'm gonna run the simulation for a little more. Okay, so it's been jumping up and down quite a bit, but it's safe to say that we're earning a more consistent amount of money from this now, so that's a good little change. Something I want to start out with here in Chowder Bay is utilize the empty space a bit better than we've done thus far. We've got a hill here. There's this triangle here which has no development on it. I think it would be kind of interesting to try and designate a district here and see if we can create something that's kind of unique and looks like a proper little district. And I think to literally get the most bang for the buck for this area, we'd need to build some medium or high density housing, because that's something we've got an excess demand for. But I'm guessing we gotta be a little careful with some pollution levels here. So air pollution, things are looking fine because we did strategically build the ports here so that air pollution is moved out into the open bay here. Ground pollution, yeah, that's a little more tricky with half this hill actually being affected. So I think we're gonna build this anyways, and then ground pollution might just be an issue here that we are going to need to tackle at like a political level. So I'm gonna disable snapping, and get a road going here that will kind of follow the train tracks here as it elevates up onto this hill. Doesn't seem like the elevation is too severe, so that's really good. And we'll just bring that back here. And then we've got the hillside here, which I think we might also be able to. I'm just trying to see the contour lines here. It's a bit tricky, but not impossible. Get another road going here, and let's just see how this looks. This looks pretty good. I could use move it to really get it squeezed in here actually. So I'm just gonna do that, get it real close to the train tracks down below here. Something like this. We see a bunch of bushes pop up due to anarchy, so I'm just gonna get rid of that stuff so we've got a bit more of a clear area to work with, because placement of the buildings is gonna be a little finicky here due to the elevation, due to the lack of space. So let's just check the pollution once again. It seems that for much of the stretch of Butler Lane here, we might actually just be able to squeeze in some residential. We might get some pollution issues up here, which will then, like I said, need to maybe handle politically. Washington Lane is definitely gonna cause some issues, so I'll see if we can maybe fit an asset in here that is going to be like an abandoned grocery store or something like that. I think that could look pretty cool, but for starters, we are gonna go with some housing. So I'll have some public housing here alongside Butler Lane, where we can have a bit of a deeper footprint due to this being the biggest area without pollution. And then as we move up here, I'm gonna have to find some smaller buildings. It might even just be some row houses. And I'm imagining that this was built many years ago as the port was expanding, because this would obviously be a pretty good location for housing facilities for some of the dock workers that were expected to move in here. So let's just see if I can squeeze in some buildings here. And I think if I can angle them like this, that's going to be pretty good due to the pollution situation. Because that's going to make it a little less deep. We actually do have a 2x2, but I think we're going to need a bit of parking as well. So we're gonna try our hand at a version with some parking down here. We're gonna start out with this tall one here, and that didn't cause any issues. Cars do have access, so that's absolutely perfect. And then we're gonna move in with some of these less tall versions. Can I fit in a third version up here? I guess I can if I kind of tweak the rotation a bit. Something like this. The elevation changes here in the parking lots is a little weird, but I imagine if we can just squeeze in a key wall or two here, then that is going to help us out immensely. Add a key here, one here as well, to just complete the look. And then, as I said, we'll try to go for a bit of a row house development here alongside Butler Lane. And due to the crazy nature of Butler Lane, I do prefer to manually place those as well. But I think we're just gonna bring this back a bit, maybe elevate it. See if we can enable some manipulation mode, grab one of these nodes here. Just kind of make this a little easier to work with. Still pretty crazy elevation here. It's a very unique, interesting area, but I think that kind of helped. Connection to the hill might actually be fitting, so that we can actually utilize the fact that we've got a small tunnel segment of the railway here. So let's actually just try and establish that. We can make it bendy with no snapping, because as I said, I will be manually placing the row houses, but I think that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to grab the row houses, and this is going to be a pretty rundown area, to be honest. I'm gonna add in some of all of the decals and other stuff that we're gonna need to make this a little rundown, and we're going to pretty much just use the level 1 or the level 2 US style here. Let's just see. I mean, this one is like the really basic version, so that is probably going to be our best fit. Might just see if I can grab a corner version. These are custom that I've grabbed from the PDX mods. It's a level 1 version here, which is probably just the fit that I'm looking for. Even though that's probably not gonna work due to the elevation differences. Never mind, we're just going strictly for this bad boy here. And might as well just try, now that I have Anarchy on, I might just try and place them and stitch them slightly together just to make the whole thing look a little more interesting. I'm gonna add an empty lot in here where we'll be adding a fence. We'll add in some decals and some other stuff, maybe a few bushes just to make it a little more run down. And then as we're nearing the top of the hill here, we are going to see some pollution issues with these row houses. So they are not the most desirable location to live. And we're just getting the additions of these in place, leading down to the hill neighborhood. Once again, using Anarchy just to kind of squeeze them together, make the area feel a little more tailored to the bendy road here instead of just zoning or placing with snapping on. That would provide a very different look. We can also tailor these parking lots a little better to their surroundings, adding some functional custom parking lots. So I'm gonna grab the, let's see, the normal one. Show marker so that we can see the connection here and ensure that this will actually work and have its functionality. Then just align it, and there's a slight issue, but I'm hopeful that, yeah, as I add a few more, the connection is reestablished and things work out. We can do the same thing here, add in a set of 2, I guess, just getting the alignment correct. Complaints about an issue, but I'm hopeful that as we add one more, the issue is gone. Nice. Now there's a bit of a graphical thing here. I think it's probably due to like the wonky elevation where these 3 decals are kind of missing unless we hover over the actual asset, but we can just add our own decals so that there's constantly going to be a parking lot decal here. I'm just gonna do that real quickly to avoid that issue. And we know where to actually place this due to the alignment of the custom parking we've created. So that's working pretty wonderfully. And I think the alignment here is, it's a little wonky, it's not perfect, but good enough is probably what we're aiming for here. Then we just need proper alignment here and align to the road, and that looks pretty nice. We'll do the same thing over here, of course. And these look okay, I think. Actually, I guess if we get like there's a bit of an edge here, but I think this is fine, and it does look more tailored to the actual location of the buildings. So I'm just gonna place a few more of these row houses down along Washington Lane here. I think we can squeeze in 3. We'll see how much of an issue ground pollution are gonna be for these assets, because if I check our graphic, they're right on the edge, but these are a little more in the bad zone, I guess, but we'll see. I need to find something interesting here that's gonna look like maybe an abandoned commercial asset. I don't want to use an industrial one because I guess that's actually gonna produce ground pollution. Because I mean, I can't really simulate that no people work here. So I'll be looking for like a commercial asset, a low density one. I'm just gonna try and place this, and then let's see if we can ruin it. So all the signage, I can get rid of that, which I think is a pretty good start. And then obviously a place like this is going to need ample graffiti placed everywhere. So they've messed up the roof and whatever they could actually reach when this place became abandoned. We're just gonna go ham up here on the roof. There's the side of the building here, which could also get a good layer of graffiti on it. Ah, this looks so cool. And of course, we're gonna need some stain decals throughout this entire area here. It's pretty run down, pretty close to industrial jobs, noise, pollution, trains on either side. So yeah, it's a great place to live. And I think right next to this abandoned workplace, whatever it is, we are just going to create a small filthy lot here. Add in some trucks and stuff. Actually gonna try and add in some cracked asphalt and see how that actually looks if we try and get that in here. That actually looks pretty good. And then we'll just need a few props. Concrete barriers here at the end of the road. A large open container. And some trash. And we did have a few empty lots up here where we are also going to add some trash. Adding some more detail by just making this place completely overgrown. For this purpose we're using the London plane, the 2 big variations, and then I'm lowering it about 4 meters into the ground. That's gonna create these really big bushes here that you can kind of use to cover up major areas, especially if there's a bit of elevation, because you can't actually see the branch. So it's just gonna look like a really big bush. And yeah, it's a bit of a different look than just using the actual bushes in game, and I'm pretty happy how it turns out when I experiment with these. To wrap up this area, we are gonna add a tiny amount of truck parking down this road here. So we're just gonna go for a surface, and I really liked the one we were using here. So if we go into concrete, there's this cracked asphalt surface here, and I'm gonna make the edges real rough to indicate just how long it's been since this thing was like actually paved out. And then we're just gonna connect it to Washington Lane. Something like this. Obviously gonna need to get rid of most of the trees here we have that are actually like covering the lot, because we don't want that right now. And then I can just use the picker tool to go in and grab some of the stuff we've been using. Actually, I think there's like a trash random maybe. Here we have a junk pile random. Nice. And we'll even add a few makeshift tents. Although I don't see how that's randomized. It's the same tent spawning again and again, so that didn't really work. But we've got some rubble here we can use as well. Piles of wood. What a great place this is. Well maintained. So we'll do the very same thing. London plane, lower it down. I think I'm gonna use some smaller variations here and just create like a thick layer next to the railway here. Kind of separate this overgrown lot. And then it's decal time, and we're going for the heavily stained decal. And I might as well just try and, yeah, this was, yeah, definitely the easiest way to just get this fixed up. We'll need a ton of cracks in the actual pavement as well. Just adding a ton of these, and it should create this really wrecked look we're going for. Let's just get a zoom in. Wow, awesome. And I'll be removing these well manicured tiny lawns from these row houses here, because if you are struggling financially and you have other major issues in your life that you're trying to deal with, you might not have the energy to keep your front lawn nicely manicured at all times. And I think that's probably reasonable enough. I'll be adding some of these, removing some of these flowers as well, and then we'll just be replacing it with the smallest of the bushes here. Just make this thing a little more overgrown. This is the small variant, right? Yeah. Could be even smaller though. And I might have just spent a little too long detailing this area because it's quite small, so I don't think it's gonna be all that substantial in like the greater scheme of things. But yeah, I mean, we spent the entire recent episode doing management stuff, so I guess I just kind of needed it. I'm going to try and create the district now so that we can see how many people are actually gonna be living here. So I'll just make sure I get this fit in. Obviously, some of the housing units we added are gonna be part of the hill, but I think that's fine. And I think I'm going to name this Butler Hill, which is a very fancy term named after Butler Lane, and I think it's kind of ironic that Butler Hill is such a rough area today. But we've got 160 households, which I think is actually pretty good, due to, you know, when we think of the small footprint here and the fact that there are no developments here before, so it's a pretty good addition. Now imagine the surprised Pikachu face as I see our deficit is growing despite adding more people and the population growing. Yeah, parking fees 2.5 thousand. Not really sure how that's possible. I mean, that amount is lower than before we added the parking fees, and at least when I check, I don't see like, I mean, it's not visibly showing to me that fewer people are actually using the parking spots that they now have to pay for. So yeah, maybe it's just a skill. Oh, it's up again. This is all over the place. It's probably a skill issue on my part. Service upkeeps has been getting a little more expensive as well. Maybe that's to serve more people. I'm not really sure. I think if we go into taxation, it's probably, let's see, where is it? Income, taxes. Yeah, it's the commercial taxation that's taking quite a hit. I'm just gonna pause because this is getting pretty bad. Slight increase in residential taxation. Makes sense. We've added more households. The city is still growing. Slight increase in industrial taxation. I guess that makes sense as well. We did add a new industrial site over here in the previous episode. But the commercial one, which really is like the backbone of our tax revenue, is yeah, it's in free fall. And I mean, the game is telling me that's the case. These commercial companies, they're struggling. There are not enough customers being fed into this downtown area. That's cutting into profit. It's probably making some of these commercial assets go bankrupt as well. Yeah, we can check the balance here. Minus 354,000. So presumably they are in debt, greatly in debt. The same is the case here. So yeah, this is really not great. We are just gonna need more people. But before I do changes to Downtown Chowder Bay, I would just like to add a bit more sprawl because, you know, the scale has to feel right. So I think the obvious expansion area will be this big peninsula we have here that's open and readily available for developments. And I think we're gonna work in this area. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'll just do a little upgrading of these roads here to a proper 2-lane road, and then I'll probably remove this segment and start redrawing some stuff. And I think I'm gonna go for a pretty cookie cutter grid layout, at least for most of this, because we actually don't have a lot of that in Easthaven. If we check the layouts I've built here for much of our, at least our single family housing units, it's pretty wild, you know, lots of blind roads with some custom cul-de-sacs and stuff. It's only when we really get to the downtown areas that the grids become a little more consistent, and even they are kind of broken up, and it's very much the same deal over here in West Point. And I prefer this. I think it looks a little more natural, but we need some old school American grids here. Not that they're old school, they're probably a pretty modern phenomena in most cases. But that makes sense out here because I envision this to be a pretty classic 50s, 60s and 70s suburban development. And I also say that because that's I guess that those are the decades where I feel most of the spawnable low density assets fit quite nicely into. Should enable contour lines here, but we really don't have a lot of elevation. But there's a little special thing I've done as we start zoning out this area, because I jumped into the asset earlier, asset editor, and the asset editor a little earlier. And my idea here was basically to grab some of the level 3 assets. And the reason I grabbed the level 3 ones is that this is the level at which new housing prefabs start spawning. Level 1 and 2 are pretty much the same houses, they just have different props. And then I grabbed these level 3 ones and I duplicated them, at least those I saw fit. And then I duplicated them as level 1 and 2s and added them to the North American low density residential theme. And the reason I did this was to hopefully be able to just add a little more variety to the type of assets that we'll see spawn here. Because generally I think that the variety in assets is, it's okay. For City Skylines 2, it is just, you know, vanilla assets after all, so for me it's okay. But I would just like to see more variety at level 1, because that's where, especially if it's an area that stays at level 1 for quite a while, then you really start to see a lot of replication, a lot of similar assets spawning, and yeah, it doesn't look all that great. So hopefully I can kind of fix this by pretty much just expanding this zone. And apparently it was a little hard trying to explain the asset editing process while creating the roads, because I've created the ugliest intersection imaginable here. So we are gonna turn this into a super node. And the way we do this, if you guys haven't tried it yet, is I'm just gonna use Anarchy to upgrade this to a roundabout segment. Then we'll be removing these oddities, so we just have the roundabout. Move into highways, grab the one way, and parallel mode is already active. And then just, let's see, this should align perfectly. And it does. And now as I remove the roundabout, we've got a single node here. And how nice this is really becomes obvious when we start editing it. So I'm gonna grab Anarchy with manipulation mode and just expand a bit on some of these nodes here, and then we can start changing some of these to 2-lane segments, and then it's gonna look real nice. So let's just see, we could have sort of a little on-ramp or a slip lane here for cars turning right onto this small highway, and if you turn left we could have a merge lane here as well. If you turn left from the suburb, and if you want to turn left here and enter the suburb, we could have a bit of a slip lane as well. And this one is looking like a bit too massive, so I think we'll just do a little downgrade here, something like that. But we can use move it again with manipulation to just make this a super smooth transition. Do the same thing over here, although we have to be a little careful here as there's a bend coming up here, so I can quickly make this look very, very weird. Don't really want that, so I'm just gonna narrow it down a bit. And there you go. Oh, I guess we can actually just bring this back a bit. Let's see. Oh, wow. That is a work of art, if I may say so myself. Now I think something I did down here was actually upgrade. Yeah, if I upgrade a few segments to have key walls, then that is pretty much going to act as like a barrier, which is a very, very cool little feature. So let's just move ahead and do that for some of these segments here. And I think that's probably fine. That adds that extra bit of detailing. And obviously I'll need to do the very same thing down here. I'll be adding a sound barrier as well to this entire side of the stretch here, as it moves real close to this residential suburban development we'll be having. It's kind of cutting into the zones ever so slightly, but I think that is fine. Then I'm gonna use the key tool to just ensure that I get zoning on the roads I want. I don't want I don't want the houses facing Sterling Street, at least not for this stretch. We'll do the same thing here in Maple Street. Just make sure we have the houses primarily facing these roads that kind of cut through here. And that is looking pretty good. And I like to use a variation between the normal street and the alleys here. It's a bit of a shame we don't have a smaller street version with some parking. There's probably a custom road or two, but I have been a bit scared about using those, if I'm completely honest with you guys. So that's why I haven't. But yeah, maybe we should at some point implement some of these more custom roads. Now the question is whether a roundabout here would be too out of character. It probably is, but I mean, then again, I like to make things just a little different. So yeah, we'll just have a single roundabout there where those roads meet, and of course we'll have a quote-unquote cul-de-sac out here. And then I'm just gonna have, let's see, we'll just let this one cut through because we've got more space here, and I am trying to add some people, so I need to optimize the space. I can't be too reserved about the space use, because if we actually check in here, you'll notice that fitting with the low density theme, there's a lot of open space in between these inner city suburbs of Chowder Bay, which means that they are really nice places to live. Just see how much greenery and space you have here. But it also means that there's not a big supply of houses here. So I imagine that housing prices here are, yeah, pretty substantial. And then it gets a lot cheaper if you're willing to move out here. Now at this point you might go, hey, Infra, why aren't you utilizing this massive space here if you're trying to add more housing? And I'm like, come on guys, isn't that obvious? I didn't think of it. I just thought about it now, so yeah, let's just do that, and let's see if I can do that while having learned some new rules about zoning. So I'm assuming this is actually gonna give me exactly the zoning I want. Yeah, that's better at least. And I'm gonna fix this super node up, obviously. Don't worry. But for now, I think we'll just get another road going here, and this is a big flat area, so this should be really nice. I don't want to take everything. I don't want to move too close to the beach because that's an obvious spot for something that maybe is a little more, I guess, specialized really. But I think it would be interesting to maybe try and utilize some one-way roads out in this area here. So I'm just gonna disable snapping. I sometimes forget. It's gonna have a run a one-way road cut through here, which probably has to turn into an alley here so that you can actually get out of this place as well. And we're just gonna align it and make sure we've got a cul-de-sac all the way down here. Something like this, so that we've got a bit of space on either side. And then we'll go for a one-way in the other direction as well. And I think it's probably pretty unconventional to do a one-way road like this, but I'll add a bit of an angle to it because we will use the key tool to once again make sure that we have zoning on these roads here and not these ones that run parallel. So I'm going to do something like this. And then maybe I'm gonna see how this actually looks, or turns out rather. Maybe we'll do something like this and then have housing here alongside this one-way stretch as well. So yeah, just trying to make things a little more interesting. I know I said I wanted a regular grid, but yeah, I make a ton of regular grids, so it's good to just get it mixed up ever so slightly. So I think we'll just do this standard road here. Then let's see if we can get the zoning to really play ball, removing and adding this. And it seems to be working pretty... What? What just happened? What even is this thing? Okay. I'm not sure what really triggered that abomination. It looks like something I created in a lab. But I am gonna try anew. And maybe I should move from here so I can get that 90 degrees. There you go. That's the way. It's almost. Yeah, it's a little wonky down here, but okay. Okay. And I'm gonna try this again. Yeah, that worked this time around, adding the key wall, so that's good. And we're gonna align here and here. So this is pretty much perfect, or at least it's good enough for me. I'm gonna keep this as is, no roundabout. We'll get our fake cul-de-sac out here, and maybe I really just want that one roundabout somewhere, just to kind of. Yeah, if we do here, I'm gonna cut a bit into this zoning and this zoning, but I think that's okay. And then in proper US fashion, we're not gonna have dedicated like painted sidewalks out here. It's a very suburban environment, and I could say this in like a critical of US planning way, but I mean, I'm not really sure these are necessary here, and these aren't in most European suburban suburbs either. So I think it makes a lot of sense just to get rid of this. There's not supposed to be a ton of traffic here, making taking a little walk super dangerous. So let's get rid of all the greenery here. We are going to manually place that, and then I'm going to designate this as a zone, or sorry, a district, of course. Then we'll be zoning and see how much of an impact an area like this actually makes. Because of course the big challenge, as I keep referring to, is that it's always nice to add more people and get that tax revenue in, but for each low density suburb we add, it puts an additional strain, a disproportionate strain. I know I messed that word up, don't replay that segment. But it places a big strain on our service coverage, because it's a large area, there's a choke point in the bridge here. Just spreads everything out, but of course that's also part of the fun. So let's just disable snapping here, and we'll designate this peninsula here all the way down here. Yoink. Okay, let's get zoning, and like I said, I've made these new duplicate assets in the low density housing, North American themed zoning style, so hopefully we'll be seeing these pop up. I think most of them are like 4 tiles deep, so that's where we hopefully will see the most variation. But yeah, we'll see how this actually looks. And a part like this, it always turns a bit odd. But I mean, with plenty of trees, maybe removing some surfaces here and there, hopefully we can achieve a look that we like. And I think I need to make sure, let's just see. Yeah, I just need to make sure that I'm not zoning alongside this street here, because I really don't want that. So I'm just going to be a little cautious here, so that I can fit in a 2 by something lot here, no issue at all. But I think for now I just want to make sure that the houses grow alongside the streets that I actually want them to, and designate it to. So here we can freely zone. But this place here might just need a little tune-up. It does. And maybe here as well. Oh, that is actually probably a line, so that's perfect. And I am going to remove these 2 by 2, maybe 2 by 3 as well at places, because I just it looks odd. Oh, I can actually get out of this. Perfect. Those assets just, they look out of place in my humble opinion. I mean, there are of course variations in lot sizes for most suburbs, but something that small, that's just going to look odd, in my not so humble opinion at least. Get this zoned up, and we are just about ready. I might leave this space empty here. because that is going to cause quite a bit of repetition. Alternatively, we're going to zone this stretch here and then just mix in some European stuff as well, just to kind of break it up. So this will spawn a 3x3 Euro, 3x3 North American, 2x3, 2x3 of both as well. So that's going to add that extra bit of variety, and might as well just fit in just a bit of European themed housing here and there, because that is really going to take the diversity of assets up a level. And most of these houses from the European theme that spawn can easily be used in an American city, I find, and the other way around. They are sufficiently generic, which is good and bad. It's bad if you really want a specific style to be built, but I think in the vanilla iteration here, where we have very limited, or we have a very set limit of assets we can actually use and play with, it's probably a good thing. And I think that's all zoned up now. We're at maybe just a single park right before we kick off, and I've got, let's see, I've got a bit of some different stuff to use. I think I'm just gonna use the small park actually, and then I'm just going to remove some stuff from it to just like slightly customize it a bit. So I just place it. Then I'm going to remove the grass here because that's gonna stick out a bit. And maybe, let's see, remove sub-elements. Now the benches are fine. Add in some pedestrian paths here, as that kind of makes it a little more well integrated to its surroundings. Something like this. So this is gonna help a bit with the land value and I guess quality of life here. Because we need things to level up. It's going to increase our tax revenue and of course produce some nicer housings. As for the auto-generated Chester crossing, let's just do Chester. That's not too bad. And then we are just about ready to hit play. There's just one more thing I need to do. I need to ensure that I serve these new areas. So Butler Hill is obviously gonna need some medical attention due to the pollution. I feel kind of bad. And Chester is obviously also gonna need coverage if it's going to be a successful area. And there are a couple of more things where we manually assign some coverage if I don't remember wrongly. But I don't remember right now. Actually, if I just click, I should be able to see I at a small recycling center. That's right, and we're gonna serve Butler Hill as well as Chester. So most of the houses have now been developed, and I think my little adventure in the asset editor was actually a good idea, because I'm pretty certain that this level 1 house is actually a level 3 asset. I mean, we can check with Picker, and that is, yeah, that is this CS in parentheses is my little custom set here. So that worked out. Is this a level 1? Is this level 1? It actually is. Okay, but it's from the EU, so that's why I didn't recognize it. Okay, cool. But if I open up here in Find It, and we expand this panel, and we go to low density residential stuff, and I say, let's see, only show custom assets, then this is the creations I made. So yeah, these are basically the level 3s that are now duplicated as level 1 and 2s as well. And as for Chester, we've got more than 600 people here, which is actually nice. I didn't expect it to be this dense, but I mean, most of the lots are relatively narrow, so that obviously kind of helps. Let's just see how the traffic is panning here alongside the Cape Rose Express, excuse me, because that's the only connection to Chowder Bay. It's a bit of traffic here, which we may just be able to give a little upgrade. So I think what we are gonna do is we are gonna upgrade. I'm gonna upgrade this segment here. So now the traffic is entering Cape Rose, but obviously that's to get to Chester. What I want is to be able to feed a good amount of traffic into Chowder Bay, because I imagine that's where people will do their shopping and all that good stuff. So I think we'll just be doing a little upgrade here as well. Gonna add in an additional lane here, and we'll add in an additional lane here by the college to, let's see, we'll actually go for this configuration here, and we'll add this one in as well. And I'm just gonna remove the crosswalks here and make this one a little nicer with move it, some manipulation mode, just to make it a bit more substantial. Get in some of these slip lanes that automatically spawn. Such a nice feature. The road tools alone in Cities 2. Yeah, whenever I do boot up Cities Skylines 1, and I barely have since I grabbed this game, to be perfectly honest with you guys, I miss the road tools instantly. Because I hated spending a ton of time in Cities 1 actually manipulating the roads. I didn't have fun doing it. It was mainly just for aesthetic purposes, because your city is just not gonna look as detailed if you don't spend some time doing this. But yeah. And let's just get these power lines moved slightly so that they're not in the middle of the... Oh, this one's actually connected to the road, but I guess that's fine. And I messed something up. No surprises there. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure the pipes I can't do that, right. Just gonna try and redraw some of these from the road over here. Disable snapping so that disable anarchy so that I can I make a proper connection somehow, please? Yeah, okay, so it connected over here. A bit weird, but now it works, and it's a much nicer crossing now. Now, some of these companies here, these commercial establishments in Narrowwood, they just have an obscene amount of debt. I mean, almost $500,000. I don't see these poor fellas really getting out of this. So in this case, there's a positive balance. That's all right, and it's the same here. So I guess this can stay. But since we are trying to kind of manage some of our residential demand, I think I'm gonna bring in a medium density US house here instead. And I'll want a small asset, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna zone half of this lot like that, and then we are gonna grab, I think we're gonna grab a bit of row housing over here instead, and then I'll be adding some row housing to these empty lots that we've zoned here, and just kind of see that develop. Actually, let's just go full row housing here, since we'll get a few low density houses in between, which I think is really cool. I kind of like that transition. This guy here as well, Petback Medical, is having such a hard time turning a profit. Yeah, I mean, this is a big corner lot. We could grab some low rent housing, I suppose. I think we've got plenty of demand for that as well. We've got a bit of a situation here where we could do with a bit more housing, and we'll go for 3x3 medium density, and then just squeeze in a row house next door and kind of densify it like that. If I remove this path, does it give me... it doesn't provide any more zoning. Oh well. So I mean, this is how I fix stuff. I just eminent domain these guys to force them out of business to place some housing instead. But I mean, it seems I have overzoned the county council has overzoned commercial, which is not so bueno. So I think in this case here, let's once again try and get in a medium density. And what am I doing? This is a medium density, and then we'll get some row housing next door. Get that in place instead. And I am mercilessly hunting for a few more businesses that are too much in debt. And we've got an all-in gear garage here, which is relatively efficient and profitable, but they've got so much in debt. We are gonna wreck this. We're gonna turn this into row housing, and we'll get a smaller commercial lot here, and we're gonna have more row housing out here. Row housing on this side as well. Really just trying to get more people in here. Oops. I just removed a profitable company. Whoops. Obviously, Chester is gonna need some detailing, and we are gonna do several layers of greenery. So we'll start by grabbing the usual suspects, this selection here of small bushes, and I'll disable anarchy so I don't completely spam them everywhere and in people's driveways and stuff like that. And then I'm just gonna add a good layer, and then we're gonna grab one of the trees, sink that into the ground so we have our own custom bushes as well, because I think that's going to just add a lot to this area. So we'll just create a nice thick layer like that, and then we'll grab the, what did we actually, I think we used the London plane, then these two big sizes here. And how much are we going for? Is 4 meters into the ground gonna be sufficient? It is going to be just right actually. Bump that up, and then we're just gonna go ham. I'll grab the apple tree, and it's usually a bit smaller, but I guess 4 is still gonna be fine. This one is nice because it has these red leaves kind of poking through, at least if you zoom in. And then we'll obviously need some trees. Now the primary types of trees we have here on this island here are oaks and spruce, and generally speaking, at least, the spruce have a tendency to grow a little closer to the coastline, or rather the amount of oaks kind of thins out as we move closer to the coastline. At least I've tried to do that throughout, so we're gonna try and adhere to that as well. So I'm going to grab the spruces here, and then I'm gonna try to just lower this to 10, enable anarchy so that we can get a thick layer, and then just spam here and there. And I'm gonna move in, of course, and remove it if they like visually clip over the roads and stuff like that, because obviously I don't want that. But I like to kind of try and place my forests or, you know, clusters of trees are probably the better term instead of actual forests. And I've said this before, but initially when we got the tree controller mod, I would just spam forests everywhere. Because yeah, we couldn't really before, right? And creating a ton of dense forest is a really, I think that's a very efficient and nice way of just adding a lot more character and general detail to your map. But now that we have more tools available and I'm not so starved for forests after having the tree controller mod for quite a while, I like to try and, you know, take my time, be a bit more, you know, think a bit more about how I place my trees. I say that as I spam completely like a madman with anarchy, but I hope you catch my drift at least. So I kind of like this look more than just having, I mean, this is just spam forests being happy with anarchy, but I kind of like this look a little more. And then we're going to move in with the, where is it, the big fat oak. 3 different sizes. I'm going to just manually be placing this, and this is going to take some time, so we're just going to speed through it. Now, doesn't that look nice? Very, very happy with how Chester's looking. I really think doing that extra bit of work in the asset editor to just make the regular theme a little more diverse for the low-level buildings, as well as adding in some European plots, has really just made this a pretty nice looking area, despite pretty much all the houses just being level 1. So very happy with this. And oh, the people of Chester, they are poor, but they are happy, and I'm sure there's a philosophical message hidden here somewhere. And all that work just to see my tax revenue drop. In fact, if I compare, it's dropped from 516,000 to 511,000, despite having added 1,300 more people. Yeah, how? It's not due to household wealth, that is relatively stable. So, I mean, that shouldn't be causing it. Oh. So I'm almost nervous at seeing my unemployment percentage is 32% and it's I'm gonna pause. I had no idea it was this bad. I mean, I can only assume that this, this is, economy 2.0, I assume, but I mean, unemployment has been growing steadily for, well, pretty much since January and February, and that's when the economy 2.0 patch hit this city. Wow, okay, we're gonna switch gears now. I need to provide some workplaces, but I mean, we were intended to kind of revamp Downtown Chowder Bay, so I guess this is a good chance to do so. And it actually also, it's a good chance to use a few more custom assets I've actually created in the asset editor, because I want some high density office here in Chowder Bay, but I don't want, I don't want super tall skyscrapers or anything like that. So I had a little adventure in the asset editor. I'm just gonna get rid of this. And let's just see if I select high density buildings, custom, I've got a couple here. So this one is basically just a hotel, so a high density commercial asset, which I've converted to an office building just to have a bit more variety, and it's level 1. But these ones here are essentially, I guess I kind of have to show you guys to really get this point across. So I am going to clear out this little here out here, and then I'm gonna place one of these because it's only really gonna make sense as I place it. Where does it align to the road? Okay, like that. So I'm just gonna align it, move it really close to the train tracks, and then place it. And I guess you can kind of see by the outline what this basically is that it's a low density office space, and then I've grabbed a couple of the high density skyscrapers and I've kind of just sunken them into the ground to create what is essentially a mid-rise office complex. Now I'm not sure this was the best base to use because there's certainly a bit of a color and architectural difference here. So I think the other example I created, this one might be a better example. So I'm gonna find a good spot for this one, and for now I think this is going to be the tallest building in Chowder Bay as well, but it is going to provide a good chunk of workplaces, and that's exactly what we need. So I need to find a spot alongside the major road here, Manor Street, and this might just be it actually. How does this align again? So I can align to that road, or I can align like this. So I think I'm gonna align it like, how do I destroy the least amount of property? That's actually with this alignment. I'm just gonna place that, and I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Once again, it's a low density office, and then I've grabbed one of the high density skyscrapers, and you can kind of see how tall this building would otherwise be if we were to use it in the city. It's more than twice the height it is now, but the height right now I think it's still a little tall. I know some of you don't really want this for Chowder Bay, but I think it's fine as the tallest building and kind of a signature building for the city, and I suspect this is going to add quite a few jobs when these fill out, and that should affect my taxes pretty substantially because this unemployment rate is just insane. Now that's not the only change we're gonna make here in Chowder Bay. I want a few more high density buildings, a few more high density commercial buildings, because I've got such a high demand. It's gonna provide more jobs obviously, and I need the tax revenue, but I also want more parking. Because currently we don't have a lot of surface parking here in Chowder Bay. We don't need a ton. I'm not trying to create like 1970s version of Houston, but I need more surface parking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place down some surface parking at first, and then we are going to upgrade some of the low density commercial assets to some high density commercial. Let's go ahead and grab some parking first, and I'll just start with some of the bigger lots. We've got a medium parking lot here I want to find some space for, and it seems I can squeeze it in here. Obviously it's going to remove some assets, that is going to remove some jobs and some tax revenue, but I think we're going to come out on top as long as we get some high density in here as well. And I am going to try and place these where I don't disrupt too much, but it is tricky because downtown is pretty well built up by now, so yeah, it's hard to completely avoid. And let's just get one placed here. I could make some custom ones, and I probably will at some point in time. But if you move in with better bulldozer and just kind of remove a few of the props on these parking lots, then they actually look pretty good. And we might actually just get one here alongside Manor Street, right in the heart of downtown. Very American to get a parking lot there. I've got this small custom one as well, which I am also going to use at a few different locations. And it is actually even upgradable, which is a super cool feature. And let's see if I can just squeeze in one more for starters, and then we're gonna start upgrading some stuff and see how that all turns out. Probably get a bit more parking down here. And we're gonna refrain from the upgrade. I like having like the small parking poke through. Gonna do the same here in the row house district. Gonna do the same thing here, and I think in this case here we can create the upgrade, and then we need to rezone some stuff to some high density. So I think, let's see, in this case here we can do a mixed here on the corner. That always turns out pretty nice. And then we'll do a North American high density and a European high density here. We'll make this a European high density, turn this into a North American high density, and maybe even see if we can squeeze in a medium density on the backside here. Just upgrading North American high density here, and European. Did I create a no, that's not a parking lot. Get some more in here. Hopefully this is all gonna turn out rather nicely. We can get some mixed housing and maybe a mixed housing unit here as well. And then let's just let this stuff grow. Did I delete what I had to delete? I think I did. So I'm gonna hit play now. We are at a pretty sizable deficit, but I have been demolishing stuff. Actually, let me just grab the better bulldozer mod and change up these parking lots a bit. I don't need these walls here. Something you can also do, which is a really easy way of making it a little more custom, is basically just switching the surface. So we can go for like let's see, we've got a cracked asphalt version here, and this should, by enable snapping, should snap rather nicely to the full outline. It does. All right, let's hit play and see just how this affects our tax revenue and of course our unemployment rate. So unemployment immediately dropped about 4%, which I guess is good, but I mean it's not really good enough. I'm gonna pause again, and then I think we're gonna, let's see, we've got more space out here, so I think we're gonna create like a suburban office park here. Right next to Chester. I actually just added a bit more development here in Uptown. We had a bit of open space here that had no development at all, as well as here, and then I've just let the simulation run, and it's jumping up and down a bit, but generally we're definitely earning some additional taxes, and we've actually managed to satisfy our commercial demand for now. So that's pretty good. Unemployment is still very high, but the population is also growing while we're doing this, so it's gonna take more effort to get that number to a more reasonable figure. And that's where this suburban office park comes into the equation. So I am just going to I'm just gonna upgrade this stretch of road at least down till this part here, where things really turn a lot more vacation resort based. And then we're gonna manually place some nice looking office buildings. And what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go for low density, of course, and then preferably I want some pretty substantial buildings, and I'm fine with them having some dedicated parking as part of the building, because that reduces the need for me to create custom parking, which I think is pretty good. So we'll just grab one here, and I'm just gonna disable anarchy so that it removes all the stuff that's growing there. And obviously higher level is preferable, but I do acknowledge that surface parking is mostly found with some of the lower level ones, so I'll have to keep that in mind. But anyways, I'll have a bit of distance between them so that we can create like a network of paths and stuff like that. Maybe we can squeeze in this bad boy here if we move real close. I think we might just be able to. Yep. Oh yeah, I say that. It wasn't giving any complaints, so I'm a bit surprised to see just how close I have to move. If I remove this and place it like... Do I need anarchy for this? I guess that kind of works. Opening up here, see if we can find some additional stuff. Can we go for a lot width of 6? We actually can. And get some of that surface parking again. So we've got a level 4 here. Very generic looking, pretty boring looking actually. That's perfect. It's a suburban office park, you know. So we're not looking for something super exciting. This one might be a good fit as well. And I'm wondering, yeah, we're actually probably going to need an additional road to just kind of cut through here, adding on to the park. Because that's going to allow us to zone some more stuff, and that's all I care about right now. I mean, not zone, place some more stuff. And let's see if we can... It's actually not the asset. Interesting. See if I can fit in a bit more here with some of those parking lots. And I'm not trying to like get them to like perfectly align to anything. I think it looks a lot more natural when you place it like this. Now we're moving down to a different set altogether. Let's see what we can find. I want something that is quite substantial still, but with the parking. And then perhaps just squeeze one additional building in here on this very corner. I'm just going to align it a bit. Yoink. Then I'm gonna place the paths, gonna disable all snapping here so that I just have freedom. I'm gonna enable anarchy, make sure I don't rig anything, because otherwise I will rig something by way of accident. Actually, let's just clear out the trees from this place here. Because when I have anarchy on, the paths I place obviously won't remove the trees. So that's going to be visually a little more challenging. And what I want to do is basically just have the paths run real close here to the buildings. And then we might be able to just use the paths for the kind of outlay we'll be using to create some surfaces. Maybe some manicured grass, something like that will probably be fitting. And then for surfaces, we're gonna grab the manicured grass, and I'm hopeful that the area bucket will actually do exactly what I want. And it pretty much does. This tool is so strong. It's not perfect, but I also imagine that this is quite hard to code, so I'm just really impressed by the modding community. It's one of the big joys, waking up in the morning, checking the PDX mods site just to see all the creative stuff people have created, all the amazing stuff. And just look how quick that was. And I mean, this is good enough as far as perfect goes, I think. And then within the manicured grass, we'll have some sort of landscaping that was, you know, done in like a, I want to say like a strict, well-planned manner. Cut all this grass, remove any last bit of biodiversity. We don't want any trees or extinction-threatened insects to actually thrive here. And this might actually be like an ample opportunity to try and use something that I'm quite excited about. And that's going to be these, let's see if I can find them. These new surfaces here that are, they basically mimic mirrored water. So you can use it to create like decorations or small ponds. And I think we're gonna try the latter in this case here. So let's just see, I'm gonna try and create a bit of a snaky footpath here. Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm gonna use a bit of snapping just to get that last bit right, because that is looking a little funky. But I guess we can do something like this. And then maybe if I add key walls on the inside here, then all of this is going to make sense in just a second. But until that second has passed, yeah, it's not gonna make sense. But it rarely does, right? It's only the final reveal of whatever I'm building, at least, that makes sense. I'm just gonna add a few weird, very weird connections here. Maybe something like this, because I gotta get this right, okay? I'm just preparing myself. Let's see, do we have key wall segments wherever we can? I think we do. So we'll go in here, and I'm probably just gonna grab the regular blue. I'm wondering if I think this tool is, yeah, that's actually gonna work. Oh man, I love this brush. It's just such a cool idea and implementation. And basically these should, yeah, they are mirrored. We can see the building there, and that's a small decorative pond, and that is just so cool. And obviously you could create like an extra river here as well, but it gets kind of finicky, especially when it's such a small area that terraforming really doesn't want to play ball. So this is just, once again, as I said before, checking PDX mods each and every day is the exciting high point of my life. Anyways, I did tell you guys that I want the distinctive feature here, like the actual office park needs to have distinctive manicured, you know, pre-planned landscaping, and then the surrounding areas will of course need to mix in with all the other natural features here. So to kind of do this, we are gonna add in these bushes that we've been using in other places and make things a lot more wild and just freely grown outside of the nice pre-planned stuff, just to create that contrast really. So it doesn't take a lot, just a few bushes here. Gonna grab some of the smaller ones as well, and then maybe just a few pine trees. And there we've got our office park, which we just need to designate as a district now. Get an overview of just how many jobs this has added to our economy. And speaking of economy, we are in the green. Oh my, that's a special feeling. Anyways, 612 employees, that is quite substantial. That is really, really nice. And I also just like the aesthetics of this area as well. I think it turned out pretty well. Generally, I'm really starting to love this area. There's quite a bit of variation going on out here, and we've also got this real lake, of course. So yeah, seems that all this extra activity has created quite a bottleneck here alongside the main off-ramp from Massachusetts Route 28 into Chowder Bay. So we are due for a little upgrade here, and potentially also change in the type of road here to maybe handle 2 lanes in this direction, something like this. Maybe go all the way down here. We don't need that roadside parking. We've got ample parking now, as long as people want to pay for it, that is. That's the hard part, I guess. And then we're just gonna expand the footprint of this massive old intersection here, so we get those extra lanes in place. Real nice looking, and hopefully that's gonna kind of help clean things up a bit here. And I think that's a wrap. Turned out to be quite a long episode, but that sometimes just happens, especially if I record over the course of several days, which was also the case here. There's a final little question here for those of you chats that stayed with me to the bitter end. We've got an empty lot here with a bit of trash and stuff. There probably was some industrial manufacturing here, but obviously now it's gone. So if you are an investor or someone who just wants to build something here or have a suggestion, let me know in the comments. I'm pretty pleased with what we managed to achieve in this episode here. The big one is, of course, somewhat stabilizing our economy, although, yeah, there's still more fighting ahead, but that's okay. We're in a much better spot, and I also think that the makeover of Downtown Chowder Bay has been quite successful. It's a little less generic now, and it also feels more realistic with this amount of service parking. Very happy with how Chester turned out, as well as the neighboring office park here. Simple layout, simple design, but I really do think it looks quite realistic. And we cannot forget Butler Hill, which is a really rough area, but I think the location is just, it feels very, very unique. So yeah, I am really enjoying it. I'll be wrapping up with some cinematics as per usual, and I just want to thank you guys so much for the support and all the feedback. I really, really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you on the next one. Goodbye.